Welcome to Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett, the show that aims to change the way you think about wealth management. Brad is a financial advisor, established radio host, and author of Retire Right. He is a managing director and partner at One Capital Management, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm managing over $4 billion for clients across the nation. Brad and his team are dedicated to helping clients protect and preserve their assets so they can reach their investment and retirement goals. And now, your host of Make Your Money Matter, Brad Barrett.
Welcome to Make Your Money Matter. I'm your host, Brad Barrett. I'm also a managing director and partner here at One Capital Management. And today we're going to dovetail a little bit off of last week. As many of you who listened to the show, I was sharing my experience with everything that went on in Lahaina and our family's experience, as well as I got some great comments, texts, emails, and I just want to thank you, everyone out there who listens. Thank you for your care, for your prayers. And, it dawned on me that I think, what I've seen over the past 2 weeks now is I want to talk about a subject matter that I know is a little bit morbid, but I wanted to share it with you around a checklist of what to do when someone you love or someone you know that you have to care for passes away. And again, I know it's not exactly a fun topic to have, but it is important. And what I've seen and what I've been dealing with personally, as I shared last week over the past couple weeks, these events will happen, whether it's a spouse, a family member, and I just want you to be prepared. I love you. I care for you. I do this show every week to walk through this kind of stuff. So I guess pinpoint this one this week, come back to it. Hopefully it doesn't happen for a long, long time. But again, it's not an exhaustive list I'm going to go through, but it's one that I think is important. But before we get started, make sure to go to our website at onecapital.com. There you can download the Make Your Money Matter podcast. You can also download the podcast on any other platform, whether it's Spotify or SoundCloud or the Apple iTunes app on your phone or even Google Podcasts. And do me a favor, leave us a review. Give us a comment. It helps us share the podcast with more people. And with that, let's get started. So again, I want to come into this message this week somewhat heavy-hearted, and obviously with what's gone on, as I shared last week on our show, with my family and just our stuff going on with Lahaina and many people out there who have lost everything as well as loved ones, I thought it'd be good to talk about this because as an advisor of nearly 2 decades now, this is something we get involved with pretty much every year. It's just a natural thing in life. Ben Franklin probably said it best. It's a little bit morbid, but the 2 most certain things in life are death and taxes. And so at some point, God's going to call us back up. And likely that will happen for many of us, for our family members, our friends, and just people around us that we need to be able to go through the process, both emotionally and rationally. And I want to speak today about the rational side. And I think this would definitely come, and I'm just going to gloss over this for a second because I think the behavioral side of things and the emotional side of things are really what should come first. The Bible even says, grieve with those who grieve, have joy with those who have joy. So it's really important that you spend that time and process that. And then as you come through that stage, sadly, what I've found even from the past 2 weeks and what's gone on with Lahaina and a lot of our friends and family there, it's one of those tragic scenarios where, you get up the next morning and unfortunately, but also fortunately, the world is still spinning. And a lot of times in my counseling with clients who've lost a loved one and they're coming to us for advice to help us or help them with the steps to take, so I kind of created this checklist and I wanted to go over that with those of you. So, flag this podcast, just one of those things you want to look back on. If it's happening to you in your life right now, it's a great way to just kind of organize your thoughts after going through the emotions. Because again, obviously in addition to the emotional toll of losing a loved one, I think what to do when someone passes away, from phone calls to paperwork can be overwhelming and not, really what I've shared from experience as well that anyone wants to deal with when they're actually still mourning or in the process of mourning their loved one. And it may seem like it's easier to put off doing these items until a later date, but I'll share from experience that quite often there are things that have to be taken care of, unfortunately, sooner rather than later. And in addition to this, if paperwork, for example, changes such as updating beneficiaries or retitling assets, if it's not completed in a certain timeline or a timely manner, these tasks that ultimately will have to get done can actually become more complicated. So again, this checklist I wanted to go through isn't in necessarily a particular order of what to do. Obviously, depending on your situation, there may be additional items as well here, but I wanted to make sure at least you kind of heard from somebody who's gone through this with clients before. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's also going to be a list that's going to have some more minor details as well as some major details. So let's get into it here. Take a lot of these with a grain of salt. If it doesn't pertain to your situation, that's fine. Move on to the next one. But I'm going to start out with, the first contact, right? You want to contact for the arrangements of what the person you loved would like to see for themselves. I mean, you want to talk to the funeral home, the cremation center, and ask them to help you get additional copies of things like a death certificate. In the financial world in particular, really the process doesn't start, I always tell clients this, until the death certificate is issued. And for those of you who have not gone through this event, it doesn't happen right away. It's a process, and you're going to want to get copies of it. And you almost always, I will say this, you almost always need more copies than you think. I mean, on average, I would say you need upwards of 10 copies, and you don't want to forget or consider arrangements for veterans, for those family members who have passed as well. So you want to also be in touch with the VA. I would also say for those certain estates and certain matters, you want to call your attorney. Okay, there's legal matters that maybe need to be addressed from the estate side, and your attorney can help you with those things. You also, depending on the age of the person who's passed, you want to contact the Social Security Administration, because benefits may change if you're losing a spouse, for example. If that's the person you're losing and you are on Social Security and you're having those kind of benefits, it's important to contact them. You also want to contact some credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, things like that. You want to notify them of the death, but Social Security will actually eventually notify the agencies as well, but that can actually take several months. You want to take a look at health insurance. I mean, again, these are things for yourself as well, but before we get into the estate side of things, just to make sure, depending on who has passed, you kind of know, what to expect for you going forward, because we don't want to think about finances in particular, but it's also very important that we think about finances. And I would say that for many of the cases that I've been involved with as a financial advisor, working with estate planning attorneys, CPAs, and just family members, right? Typically the wishes of the deceased really is for the care of those they're leaving behind. And so one of the better ways we can honor people is to do some of these things. That's why I want to put this list together. And again, like I said, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's also kind of a detailed one as well. So, if some of these things don't pertain to you, that's okay. When I talk about the insurance side of things, particularly health insurance, if your insurance is provided, let's say by a former employer, for example, you're going to want to contact them. And obviously, you're going to want to, with that regarding an old employer, pensions come up very openly here, right? Depending on the pension plan option originally selected by you and your spouse, you may be eligible to receive the benefit payments. You want to alert them of that and make sure that they're working with you. Now, I just spoke about insurance on the health side. I also want to talk about insurance you might have on the life insurance side. You obviously want to now get into notifying the life insurance companies and file what's called a death claim. This is typically a very easy process, to be fair. So you don't want to, put this one off for later. This is one that you want to kind of get in the process here. The sooner you get the funds, the better you are to help with a lot of the expenses I just mentioned, whether it's the funeral expenses, or just daily life expenses. So it's really important. And you can actually, believe it or not, I looked this up because some insurance policies that I've dealt with in the past for clients, have been purchased 30, 40, 50 years ago. So it's a little bit outdated. There is a search for life insurance policies that you can actually be conducted through the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. So you can look up the NAIC and you can actually do a policy search. So if you're not sure if your loved one had an insurance policy, maybe it's a spouse in this case, right? You can look it up, again, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners.
Stay connected. Get frequent updates on the show. Follow Brad Barrett and Make Your Money Matter on most social media platforms. And catch full episodes of Make Your Money Matter streaming now on our YouTube channel. To schedule your no-obligation appointment, go to onecapital.com or call 805-410-5454.
Speaking of spouse, I mentioned earlier veterans, because I deal with a lot of this for our clients, right? So if your spouse was a veteran, for example, you're also going to want to contact the Department of Veteran Affairs, the VA, obviously to see if there's any benefits there. From there, I think you go into, again, this isn't a timeline of checklist here, but just kind of working a little bit chronologically. You're going to want to talk to credit card companies, banks, mortgage companies, obviously insurance companies, outside of health or life, and any other, I'll call it important bill-related companies, right? You may have accounts that need to be changed into your name or even closed, and making sure you have access to them. By the way, that starts before someone passes as well, with regards to many of my conversations I have here on the podcast, as well as with clients around estate planning. Because the one thing I will share, it's one of those things that I've experienced that we don't want to do it right away. We don't really put much effort into it, but it becomes really important if something, God forbid, happens. So a lot of it can be done beforehand. But afterwards, then you want to contact all the agencies. You also want to complete an unclaimed property search. This is something that I just recommend. I mean, it doesn't have to happen if you know everything that's going on, but you can complete an unclaimed property search for your descendant, those who passed, and it can be done through missingmoney.com or via your state's unclaimed property website. Just something to consider. And to round off this list a little bit, I'm just going to do a little bit of a firestorm here on a couple things. This is where you want to contact your CPA. You want to update your own estate plan. You're going to want to contact your financial advisor as well. Obviously, there you need to change account titles, file beneficiary paperwork for IRAs or 401ks, things like that. You're going to want to retitle any assets, which, by the way, your financial advisor, CPA, and estate planning attorney will help you with. And you want to prepare and probate the estate. Again, this is where your CPA and really your estate planning attorney can often help here. Now, again, sorry to reiterate, but again, not an exhaustive list, but those are some of the things to do and to consider and think about as you're going through this process. And I want to share on the flip side of this, what not to do when someone passes away, because just as important as all of those items I just mentioned, equally important to understand the things that maybe you shouldn't do is important. So do not do some of these things, right? Don't make big decisions that you're not required to make. For example, you don't need to decide to keep or sell the house and move out right away and right at that moment. Time to adjust really makes sense here in your new situation. And I think really emotional and snap decisions could be regrettable. Also, in that same regard, don't necessarily make major purchases. It's the time when I often see people as an advisor spend more money than normal. This is something I spoke about emotionally. There's a retail therapy environment here. Sometimes it's due to a lack of focus on finances. Sometimes it's due to wanting to live for today because this event happened. Whatever it might be, in either way, it's a really important time to focus on your finances and not let them get away from you. And also share this. Don't be too quick to give away money or stuff or items. I mean, I see clients giving away larger gifts to children after a spouse passes. And again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I want you to go through the emotional process before you get to the pragmatic and the rational here. And I think lastly, you really should take time to organize and really take inventory of all your investments and all your assets, okay? It can be a timely and tedious task, I know, and it may help your family, though, tremendously in the future. We have seen many instances here at One Capital Management where investment accounts were forgotten or stock certificates discovered, and your loved ones are often then faced with having to play detective, really, to uncover these things. And if you're not comfortable with them knowing those details, then make sure your advisor, especially if they don't manage all of your assets right, or your CPA or your estate planning attorney, make sure they have a complete list of all your accounts as well. So, hey, I hope you enjoyed that today. I know it's a little bit of a morbid subject matter, but I at least wanted to share with you some of the items that we see as an experienced advisor around a cathartic event when someone passes away. And obviously I wanted to share this after my conversation last week and just hearing a lot of the stories that I heard from sharing our story of the Lahaina fires. And again, just a good noted podcast to come back to. And again, speak with your people, your counsel who's around you. And if you don't have that, make sure you build that team, because there will be events in life that'll be very important to have those trusted individuals. I want to thank you for listening to the Make Your Money Matter show. As always, before acting on anything discussed today, speak with your financial advisor near you about your specific situation. Or again, if you'd like our help, you can reach us at 805-410-5454. And until next week, always remember to make your money matter.
The information in this show is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration a listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.